Hey everybody, Chris Gill here. Let's talk. So recently, I made the switch from Studio One Pro to Logic Pro 10. Now, there's already a ton of videos been done by people that probably know way more about what's going on than I do, and frankly, the topic's been discussed at length. So the nuts and bolts of it is Personas has been making some changes to their business model, to their pricing structure, to features available, to different tiers of pricing, and as a Studio One Pro user from all the way back to version 1, these new pricing changes and some of the companies that they've chosen to align themselves with no longer align with my personal values as a consumer. So, to that end, right or wrong, I have decided to change my DAW from Studio One to Logic Pro 10. Now, to be fair, I've spent the better part of, I think, close to 10 years learning Studio One. It's really the only DAW that I have ever learned and used. So just by that alone, I knew that I was going to be a big challenge ahead of me, kind of getting into Logic Pro and learning, their workflow versus Studio One. But I did want to at least make a video and kind of share my initial thoughts. Having made the switch now, I've been using Logic Pro for about a month, and there are a lot of things that I really like about it, a lot of things that I like better than Studio One, but there are some things about Studio One that I definitely miss in terms of workflow. So for me, the hands down biggest feature that I have struggled with in Logic Pro is routing. And from having watched other guys do tutorials on like Pro Tools and Logic and some other DAWs, it's like you have in the software itself, like behind the scenes, you have buses that are like pre-configured, and you have an insane amount of them. Bus 1 through bus 128. So most of us aren't using 128 buses, and you use these buses for everything, for again, actual, buses, effect sends, different types of routing, a mix bus, a master bus. But you have to kind of have, in Logic Pro, you have to kind of have a mental roadmap of your entire session before you begin. And I say that because once you assign something to a bus, those buses can't be like reordered and reconfigured or reassigned really easily. In Studio One, you start recording a bunch of tracks. You say, create a new bus for these tracks, and then you're done. And then you can move that bus over to the side, and then you can reorganize them. You can put buses inside of buses. So if you decide later this bus needs to be first in line or second in line or whatever, you can just really quickly drag and drop. In Logic Pro, there's a lot more legwork. I feel like it's a little bit like solving a Rubik's Cubes in terms of, okay, you can move this bus to an empty bus that's down here, and then move this one up, and then move this one back up to get it to be number 2. Anyway, it's a little thing, and it's something I'm just going to have to learn to work around. But busing has been a little bit of a struggle and a challenge. Some things I really like about Logic. I will say working with Logic's virtual instruments and their amp simulations and their stock plugins has been a joy. I would say that's something that Apple Logic Pro is decades ahead of maybe not decades, that's an exaggeration, is a good amount of time ahead of Studio One, is that their stock plugins and their stock instruments are hands down better than anything Studio One has. Even with some of the new synths that Studio One has released, they're still playing catch up to Logic. No question about it. Something else that I do miss from Studio One is plugin inserts. So in terms of browsing for plugins, finding the plugin I want, putting it in, man, being able to open your, insert a plugin and then type in the name of the plugin and insert it, I really miss that. I have had to, and I know there are workarounds in Logic. So like I've created a favorites list that, but I still have to, click insert, go to my favorites folder, look through my list of all the plugins I want and find it. In that regard, that has probably been the biggest hiccup in my workflow, is quickly being able to add plugins, find the plugin that I want, and navigate that way. Something about Logic that I think has PreSonus beat is their stock reverbs. What the irony of this is, I actually made a video, I think about a year or two now ago, just raving about PreSonus' stock reverb, and it is good. It's still good, and even with some of the new Dolby, Atmos, reverbs, the open air reverb that Studio One now has, that's a cool tool. It's a cool plugin. But the reverbs that come with Logic Pro, they sound really, really, really good. From the first moment I put them on a group of drums and fired them up, I was really happy. So I could go on and on comparing the differences, and honestly, there's going to be a lot of that moving forward. But the big takeaway is, and the thing I have learned through this whole experience is there are a lot of really good things about, I'm sure, every DAW out there, and then there are some things that are different that each DAW could take and learn from. It really does come down to pick a DAW, learn its workflow, and learn all the ins and outs you can. And that's going to be my personal task moving forward over the next however long I stick with Logic Pro. I'm hoping it's another decade-long span. Changing DAWs is a lot of work, and it's not something that I have super enjoyed. I love learning new things. I love learning new tools, but just the transition itself, knowing that I've got to have old project files and in an old version of Studio One. But again, for me personally, just looking at kind of the seeing the writing on the wall for PreSonus as a company, and just terms of some of the decisions they're making, I just don't think they're no longer a good fit for me personally, me, Chris Gill. No shade, no judgment on anyone that is, getting on board with Studio One or is continuing to use Studio One. And for what you're doing, the new pricing model, you may not even care. It may not even affect you. Again, it's a great piece of software. It's just, the company decisions are just no longer something that I choose to participate in. So Logic Pro is where it's going to be at for me. I'm going to be making a lot of content there. Sorry, I know this got a little long-winded, but I just kind of wanted to explain, because a lot of my content up to this point has been Studio One related, and I felt like I owed everyone an explanation as to why I am making that transition. So again, hope you continue to follow the channel. Stick with me. I'm going to be learning a lot. If you find yourself in the same boat with me, we're going to be exploring a lot of Logic's features. There's going to be a lot of content around mixing in Logic. So stick with it. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you're getting updates for videos to come, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.